When an avoidant keeps a quiet line of sight on you, it often looks harmless from the outside, almost casual. But it's one of the strongest signs that they haven't actually let go, because avoidant people rarely say, "I miss you. I want you back." Directly, they manage their longing from a distance, where they can feel you without having to be fully accountable to you. So they watch your stories but don't react. They check when you're online but don't text. They scroll your profile, notice your posts, maybe even remember the exact shirt you're wearing in a picture because they've zoomed it more than once, and yet they behave like a ghost who refuses to admit they're still in the room. That quiet surveillance is their way of staying connected to you without stepping into the vulnerability of contact. It soothes them just enough to feel like you're not completely gone, while allowing them to avoid the risk of hearing something they're not ready to face, like, "I've moved on. I'm not going back into that dynamic," or "Things have to change if this ever restarts." Watching you from afar lets them keep the fantasy that you're still emotionally available, still there, as an option, without having to ask if that's actually true. So they ask mutual friends how you're doing. They casually slip your name into conversations. "Have you talked to them lately?" And when your friends mention you're leveling up, setting boundaries, healing, they feel a quiet sting, but they rarely show it. They just keep collecting information, because information lets them feel in control while their emotions are secretly not. For you, this can feel maddening, because you sense it, you see the views, you notice the follow, unfollow, the random likes on old posts. The way your name still somehow stays around their circle, and part of you wonders, if they're this tuned in, why don't they just talk to me like an adult? But what you're really witnessing is not a lack of care. It's a lack of courage. They want to feel you without risking rejection. They want access to your world without the responsibility of being in your life. They want the comfort of knowing you're okay, without having to face what they did when you weren't. That quiet line of sight is also their way of checking how much power they still have. They want to see if you're posting sad quotes, if you look devastated, if you seem stuck, because that reassures the part of them that believes you're still emotionally tied, that the door might still be open. And if they don't see that, if instead they see you brighter, clearer, more grounded, it triggers both fear and fascination, fear that they misplayed their hand and actually lost you. Fascination with this new version of you, who survived the loss they assumed would shatter you. The important thing to understand is that this monitoring is not neutral. It's an emotional behavior. Even if they play it off as just curious, people who are done rarely check this much. They don't put energy into someone they've truly closed the chapter on. An avoidant who secretly wants you back will often stay in the shadows of your online life because it's the only place they feel safe enough to be close to you. They can imagine conversations, replay memories, read between your captions, all without risking exposure. But for you, this is where your power comes in. Your job is not to perform for their gaze or post things to manipulate their reaction. Your job is to understand that their quiet line of sight confirms something you already knew in your body. This connection mattered. It still matters to them on some level, and you were not crazy for feeling that depth at the same time. You must not confuse their watching with their willingness to show up. Someone can look at your life every day and still not step into it with the maturity and consistency you deserve. And that's the gap you need to keep clear in your mind. Their silent attention is a sign of attachment, but it is not yet a sign of readiness. So when you notice them hovering, instead of twisting yourself to send messages through posts and stories, anchor into yourself, ask, if they do come back, What version of me do I want them to meet? The one who waits and reads meaning into every view, or the one who knows they are worth more than being kept on silent watch from a distance? Let their quiet line of sight be information, not oxygen, proof that you were significant, not proof that you must put your life on hold, because in the end, the real question isn't, are they still looking at me? It's, if they knock on the door again. Is what they're offering worthy of the person I've become while they were only watching? When an avoidant re-enters with those safe, neutral check-ins, it can look so harmless on the surface that you almost gaslight yourself into believing it means nothing. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" A random meme, a reel, a comment on a story, something about work, a shared interest, or even a practical question they absolutely could have Googled themselves. And yet, deep down, you feel it. This isn't random. This isn't nothing. This is them touching the door without fully walking back through it, and understanding what that really means can stop you from rushing back into the same old cycle. For an avoidant, direct emotional honesty feels like standing under a spotlight with no armor, saying, "I miss you, I was wrong, I want you back," would require them to confront their own behavior, their fear, their inconsistency, and the reality that they mishandled someone who genuinely cared, and that level of accountability terrifies them. So instead, they choose the back-road neutral contact, low-risk conversation, messages that carry emotion underneath, but none on the surface. Just checking in. Saw this and thought of you. How's your family? Or, remember this place. And they send it as if they are simply being friendly. But what they're actually doing is testing the water of your openness without risking the humiliation of a direct rejection. When that message lands on your phone, your nervous system lights up because your history with them is living in your body. Part of you hears it as, "I miss you," even if the text only says, "This video made me laugh." You'll get it? And that's what makes these neutral check-ins so emotionally dangerous. They carry just enough warmth to reawaken your hope, but not enough substance to qualify as growth. Deep down, an avoidant who does this often wants two things at once. They want to feel like they haven't completely lost you, like you're still emotionally available if they ever decide to come back properly, and they want to soothe their own guilt by reassuring themselves that you're okay with them, that you don't hate them, that they didn't break you as badly as they secretly fear they did. So they send out these small emotional probes, and your response becomes data. If you respond warmly, they feel relief. They tell themselves, "See, we're fine." They're still there, which lowers the urgency to actually repair anything, because in their mind the connection hasn't really died. It just shifted shape. If you respond coldly or not at all, they feel a sting of loss, maybe even indignation. But underneath, that is the very thing they're trying not to touch, the realization that their choices had real consequences, that their behavior closed a door they assumed would always be open. What you need to see is that the content of these messages is rarely the point. It's the timing and pattern that matter. They often appear after you've gone quiet, after you've stopped reaching out, after your social media starts showing you more alive, more grounded, maybe even happier. They feel your energy slipping away, and their nervous system panics enough to throw out a casual hook. Not an apology, not a direct attempt to take responsibility, just a hook. And if you bite, you often find yourself back in a limbo where you're talking again, but nothing is actually defined. You're emotionally activated again, but nothing has truly changed. They keep it light because light feels safe. They can tell themselves, "I'm just being friendly, I'm not leading them on," while also feeding on the comfort of your presence. And meanwhile you're left reading between the lines, over-analyzing every emoji, every aha, wondering if this is the beginning of a real return or just another orbit. The truth is, a neutral check in from someone who hurt you is not automatically a bad thing. Sometimes it is a first clumsy step toward deeper repair. But it is not enough on its own, and you cannot afford to treat it as if it is. The real question is not, did they message? But, what do they do after the message? Do they follow through, initiate real conversations, bring up the past with honesty, show concern for how you felt, ask what you need if anything were to restart? Or do they slip right back into the old pattern of vague contact and emotional ambiguity? Your job is not to decode every neutral, hey, for hidden meaning. Your job is to hold your standards steady while you respond. If you choose to reply, let it be from a place of self-respect, not hunger. You can be kind without volunteering your heart. You can be open without erasing what happened. You can wait to see whether this small opening widens into truth or collapses back into silence. And if it collapses, let that be your answer. An avoidance-safe, neutral check-ins often mean, I still feel connected to you, but I'm scared to come back fully. And while that may be human and understandable, it is not yet the same as, I am ready to show up for you in the way you deserve, until their behavior proves otherwise over time. Treat these messages as signs of unfinished feelings, not as proof of readiness. Because you deserve more than quiet pings from someone who isn't brave enough to step fully toward you. You deserve clarity, accountability, and a love that doesn't hide behind just checking in. When you finally start to detach, level up, and pull your energy back toward yourself, the avoidance reaction is almost never neutral, and that reaction, whether they admit it or not, is one of the clearest signs they still feel attached. Because for a long time they were used to being the gravitational center of your emotional world. They were used to your attention, your checking in, your constant emotional availability. So when that shifts, their nervous system feels it as a loss of control, even if they're the one who pulled away first, even if they're the one who said they needed space. They expected you to orbit them from a distance, not to actually break the orbit and start spinning in your own direction. So the moment your energy truly changes, their behavior often does too. Maybe you stop replying instantly. You become less available for long, draining conversations. You stop explaining your every feeling. You start posting more about your own life without angling it toward them. You glow up emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually, and instead of being happy for you from a safe distance, they flinch. Sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. They might suddenly pop up in your messages more often, acting more curious, more attentive, asking what you're doing, who you're with, how you are, not out of pure care, but because your detachment is shaking their sense of security. They are realizing that the version of you who would have dropped everything for them is shifting into someone who no longer does. That's when you start to see odd jealousy, even if they have no rights to it. They might make a strange comment about someone who liked your post, ask a pointed question about a person in your photo, joke about you, moving on quickly, or suddenly act put off if you mention a new hobby, a new friend, or a new chapter. What they're really saying underneath is, "Wet, I thought I had more time. I thought you'd stay emotionally parked on me while I figured myself out." Your glow up confronts them with something they've been avoiding. The reality that you are actually capable of living, thriving, and growing without them, and that realization hits their ego, not just their heart. Because while they may have framed you as too emotional or too attached, a part of them liked knowing they were that central to your inner world. When that starts to fade, they feel replaced, not necessarily by a new person, but by your new self-respect. So they respond with more frequent messages, more just thinking of you. Pings, more attempts to draw your focus back in their direction. Under the surface, they're trying to prove to themselves that they still matter, that they can still get a reaction, still activate your feelings, and if you quickly rush back into deep emotional exchange, it reassures them, okay, I haven't lost them completely, which reduces their anxiety, but keeps you stuck in the same pattern. Pay attention to how their contact lines up with your energy shifts when you were crying, over-explaining, trying to fix everything. They might have been distant, convinced that you would always be there, but when you started going quiet, building boundaries, taking care of yourself, or even entertaining the idea of someone new, suddenly they noticed, suddenly they missed you, suddenly they were nostalgic. This isn't a coincidence, it's the avoidant system reacting to risk. The risk that you are no longer a guaranteed backup plan, the risk that your love is not an endless resource, the risk that their pull finally pushed you into a version of yourself that chooses peace over chaos. Sometimes that reaction isn't more contact but more intensity. When they do contact, the messages get sweeter, the compliments more direct, the flirting more obvious. They might say things like, I'm happy for you, but it's weird seeing you with someone else. Or, no one will ever understand you like I do. Or, we really had something special. These kinds of comments are meant to pull you back into the emotional bond without them having to actually address why they didn't protect it when they had you. And this is where your power comes in, because their strong reaction to your detachment is data, not destiny. It tells you that you mattered, that your energy was felt, that your absence is not neutral, but it does not yet tell you that they are safe for your heart. What you must watch is what they do after that initial wave of reaction. Do they use it as a wake-up call and show up consistently, vulnerably, with real accountability? Or do they just pull you close enough to feel chosen again, and then drift back into old patterns once their fear settles? Your glow up is not a strategy to make them panic, it is a natural outcome of you choosing yourself. But their reaction to it reveals exactly how they have been leaning on your energy this whole time. If they only step toward you when they feel you slipping away, you are not being loved, you are being managed. And you deserve more than to be someone's emotional safety net. They only fight for when they're afraid of losing it. When an avoidant holds onto emotional anchors from your past, it's one of the clearest signs that they haven't truly let go of you, even if they were the one who walked away, because emotional anchors are not just memories. They're the specific threads that kept their heart attached to you in ways they probably didn't understand while you were still there. And when they secretly want you back, they keep tugging on those threads from a distance, trying to feel you again without having to confess that they miss you. You see it when they randomly bring up that one night you shared a deep conversation, the silly inside joke no one else would understand, the restaurant where you celebrated something important, the song that played during a big moment. They say things like, remember when I was just thinking about that trip we took. I drove past that place we used to go. And it sounds casual, but it's not. They are revisiting the emotional anchors that bonded them to you, because that's how they safely reconnect to the feeling of. Without having to directly say, I still feel connected to you. Avoidant people don't usually sit comfortably in present, tense vulnerability. They visit their feelings through the back door of nostalgia. It's easier for them to talk about what you were than to admit what they still want, so the past becomes their safe language for unspoken longing. Those anchors live in their private world too, not just in conversation. They scroll old photos of you, reread old chats, replay old voice notes, or mentally revisit moments where you made them feel seen, accepted, or calm. They don't advertise that, but it's there, and you often feel it on your side without even being told. You randomly think of the same memory. You get a message from them exactly on an anniversary of something small that only you two would notice, and it confuses you. Because you thought they were done. You thought they'd moved on. Yet here they are fishing in the waters of your shared past, and part of you lights up because it confirms what your intuition already knew. You were not forgettable to them. They just didn't know how to stay. Holding on to emotional anchors is also their way of trying to keep you emotionally available while avoiding accountability. If they can keep the shared memories alive, they can feel that there's still a bridge between you, which soothes their fear of total loss. But they don't have to step into the hard conversations that would come with saying, "I want to rebuild something with you." They get the comfort of connection without the risk of commitment. That's why they might bring up sweet or deep memories, right, when you're trying to move forward. They sense you creating distance, and instead of clearly saying, "I miss what we had and I'm willing to do better," they send you a memory as if to say, "Don't forget this. Don't erase us," hoping it will pull your heart back into the old emotional space. It can be incredibly disorienting for you because those anchors are not random to you either. Those moments mattered. They are the same reasons you stayed as long as you did. The night you saw their softer side, the time they let you in, the shared laughter that felt like home. So when they bring it up, it hits you right where you're still tender, and it's easy to translate that as, "They've changed. They must want me back," when in reality it often means, "I still feel attached to you, but I haven't yet done the work to be a different partner." Emotional anchors are powerful because they bypass your logic and go straight to your nervous system. They remind your body of how safe, loved, or connected you once felt with them, which is why you have to stay conscious when those texts or comments appear. Instead of asking only, "Do they remember?" Ask, "What are they doing with that memory now? Are they using it to build something new with you?" Taking responsibility, asking what you need, and offering real change, or are they just dropping it into your inbox like a spark to see if your old fire for them will reignite? Their attachment to your shared past is real, and it's valid to feel tenderness about that. It means you were not crazy for believing the connection was deep, but you cannot live in those old moments forever. You cannot let them keep you emotionally available through memories while staying practically unavailable in the present, because you deserve a love that doesn't only miss you in hindsight, but chooses you in real time, with actions that honor both the past you shared and the person you have become since it ended. When an avoidant looks for excuses to stay emotionally tethered to you, what they're really doing is trying to keep access to your emotional energy without stepping back into full responsibility. So it won't usually sound like, "I miss you. I want you back." It will sound like, "Can I ask your advice on something? You're the only one I can talk to about this. I really need your help with X." And on the surface it looks harmless, even flattering. But underneath it's a quiet strategy to keep you connected. They reach for your empathy, your insight, your stability, because those were the parts of you that always made them feel safer in a world that overwhelms them. And losing that feels scarier than they admit, so they create reasons to keep you in their orbit. Reasons that sound practical, but are actually emotional in disguise. They might say they need help with a work decision, feedback on a message, your opinion on a family issue, or comfort after a tough day, and it's always framed like, "I just value your perspective," or "No one gets me like you," which hits your heart exactly where it's wired to respond. Because caring is your default. You were the one who held their fears, soothed their spirals, understood their moods. So when they come back with these small requests, it feels like a natural extension of the connection you had. You tell yourself, "We're just talking, I'm just being kind." But emotionally, every time you say yes, you're reopening that channel. You are letting them tap back into the same well they once took for granted. Avoidant people often feel safest when they're getting your emotional benefits without being your partner, because partnership comes with expectations, consistency, accountability, and that terrifies them. But support, friendship, just talking feels looser, less defined. They get to keep you as an emotional home while still maintaining the story that they're not ready, not sure, not committed, and you end up back in a familiar role, giving them comfort, insight, and reassurance while your own needs and wounds remain unaddressed. You'll notice they rarely ask, "How did this all affect you? What do you need from me now? How can I repair what I broke?" Those are the questions of someone ready to rebuild. Instead, they ask things that pull your focus onto enters them. They turn to you when they feel lost, lonely, or overwhelmed, because in their mind you are still the safest place they've ever known. Even if they were the one who fractured that safety, and it creates a painful double bind for you, because part of you wants to be there. It reminds you of the closeness you once had, of the bond where you were the person they leaned on, and another part of you feels drained, confused, like you're being asked to keep investing in someone who has not earned access to your heart again. These excuses to stay tethered are often timed. Too, they may reach out more when you've gone quiet, when your life is visibly moving forward, when you're less available, because your distance activates their fear of losing you. And instead of directly saying, "I'm scared I've lost you," they send a problem for you to solve, a feeling for you to soothe, a situation for you to step into, and if you do, it reassures them that the line between you is still alive. Even if they never call it what it is, they rarely need your advice as much as they need your presence. And the fact that they choose you over anyone else in those moments is not an accident, it's attachment. But attachment without evolution still hurts, because you're not just some wise friend to them. You're someone who loved them deeply. And every, "Can you help me with this?" hits the same open nerve that the breakup or distance created. What makes this so hard is that you're not wrong. They do trust you. They do feel understood by you. They do believe your insight is special, but if you are honest, how often do they show the same level of emotional labor for you? Are they asking how you're healing? Are they creating space to hear your pain? Are they checking if you have the capacity before pouring their problems onto you? Or have you slid back into being their unpaid therapist, the emotional anchor in a relationship that no longer carries the title? They get the best of your emotional world while you get the crumbs of their half, availability. When an avoidant is serious about coming back, their excuses to stay connected eventually give way to real conversation. They stop hiding behind, "I just need help," and start saying, "I know I hurt you and I want to talk about it." They don't just lean on you when they're in crisis. They show up when you are. They don't just ask for your wisdom, they offer theirs. But when they're not ready, they will keep it in the safe zone of, "We're just talking," hoping you'll stay emotionally invested enough that, if they ever do decide to return, they won't have to start from scratch. Your work is to notice when these tethers keep you stuck, to ask yourself, if this person didn't have history with me, would this level of emotional access make sense? And do I feel nourished by these interactions or quietly opened and then left hanging? Because you are allowed to say no, you are allowed to say, I'm not the right person for you to lean on anymore. You are allowed to require that any emotional tether between you be backed by real commitment. Not just convenience, you gave them your heart once. You don't have to keep giving them your energy on discount, just so they don't have to sit alone with the consequences of letting you go.